Good morning and namaste to all of you. This morning, the subject of the lecture, Seeing God in Everything, Everywhere, is actually based upon a talk which Swami Vivekananda gives in 1986 in London, which forms part of his Jnana Yoga, the lecture series on the way of knowledge, Jnana Yoga. So, seeing God in everyone or seeing God everywhere, that is the original talk. And the talk is based on the Ishopanishad. So this today's talk forms a part of a series of talks which we are having on Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. Swami Vivekananda, of course, he is the founder of this Vedanta society, the first of the Vedanta societies. But his approach to Vedanta is a unique and a powerful and a modern. So it deserves to be, we should focus upon it directly. That's the purpose of this lecture series. In this talk, Swami Vivekananda begins with a most obvious problem of our life, that is, we suffer. Suffering, he calls it the problem of a evil, or in Indian terms, dukkha, suffering. And that seems to be a constant a condition of a life. You overcome a one type of a suffering, either that one comes and back again and something else comes. And there is a physical suffering, there is a mental suffering, there are the problems in the families and the societies, in a nation. So the problems with our national environment, global warming is the problem of our day. Hmm? So all of these are problems we suffer, and we try to solve it in worldly ways. The religion offers us a solution. The religion comes along and says that there is an ultimate reality beyond this world of suffering. Try to get that, realize that, find that, attain that, and it will go beyond suffering. Some call it a God, some call it Allah, some call it a Jehovah. Vedanta, it is called Brahman. So there is, religion offers a solution to suffering. In fact, this is the common promise of all religions. You attain nirvana, moksha, salvation, whatever it is called in a different religious traditions, but a common factor is you go beyond worldly suffering. But then Swami Vivekananda points out, this doesn't is not a really a solution at all. When you look closely, what it seems to say is, here is this world, there are problems in this world. Give up this world and attain something called God. So this a world with which we use so real to us, in fact the only reality to us. It seems to we have been asking this give up for some vague promise, for something that we take on faith. That is not yet real to us, I know it. God might be a reality to Sri Ramakrishna or saints and sages of different religions. But to me right now, it's something, it's a matter of a faith, or it's a matter of a belief system or a philosophy. Whereas this world presented by the sciences seems to be very real. And it has the funny story of a man who was being troubled by mosquito, has been troubled. His friend came to help him, and I gave the poor man such a blow that he did kill the mosquito, but I killed the man too. And he says that religion seems to be offering such a solution. If you look closely, what is being demanded? All that seems to be fun. You give that up. Sometimes you say eat healthy, and one characteristic of healthy food is it should not be tasty. It is not a true. Healthy food can be very tasty, but that seems to be very general idea. So if you are religious and spiritual, you cannot have fun in the world. And that's the general idea of religion in across the different traditions. Whether it's a here or a moment you are somebody is a regular church goer and a very seriously interested in a practicing his faith, he immediately get the idea of a sour faced person who is not interested in being interested and fun, so on. In India, if somebody became a very interested in a religion and a spirituality, he'll immediately says, "Oh, you're going to become a monk, you go away from the mountain system." That's the general idea. There are somehow you are going away from life. Arjuna has the same idea in the Bhagavad Gita. When he decided that the worldly pursuits are not for him, so he wanted to give it up and go away. Of course, Krishna persuaded him, otherwise. Hmm? So, what is the secret of religion? Swami Vivekananda says that two religions are world are right, but the way it is presented does not quite appeal to our reasons. It seems is an unreasonable demand. What should be rare is the religion which is equally heart and head, reason and a feeling. And then Swami Vivekananda says, I would beg to state that a Vedanta is the rational religion for this age. What a Vedanta says will be acceptable to the rational minds of this age. Before we go on, let me just say, when I read that, I was reminded of Einstein. A letter he wrote to one Eric Goodkind or Goodkind was sold last year. Christie's of the Action House, they sold at a letter for $2.9 million. What's in that letter? Eric Goodkind, I researched this. He was a Jewish philosopher and a Jewish teacher in the early 20th century. He wrote a book, number of books, one of which was about a new presentation of the Jewish faith, and he sent a copy to Einstein, who was a minister at that time, 1952 or 53 year. And Einstein read that book, and he wrote back to Eric Gottkind. He says, in that letter, he says, I consider the world of a God to be nothing other than a collection of human weaknesses. To me, goes on, but the basic thing, this is that to me, to Jewish faith, along with all other religions, is a collection of a childish superstitious. He says that. So does that mean Einstein was an atheist? Not at all. He says very clearly elsewhere, written, the God I believe in is a Spinoza's God. He writes a poem to Spinoza, the great philosopher Spinoza, who lived about 300 years ago. 200 300 years ago in Amsterdam. He wrote the book Ethics, where he talks about a God. Why does Einstein says I believe in that God? Because it's not a God set up apart from nature, not a anthropomorphic God somewhere else. It is a God who revealed in the personal workings of this vast universe. And Einstein writes, so what is in a common parlance called pantheism, God in this universe. Not a personal deity involved in the day-to-day lives of a human beings. So I don't believe in that. This a pantheist God. If you actually study what a Spinoza wrote about, in a very rational, it is a book like of geometry with axioms and the derivations of geometry. So if you read about it, it sounds a lot like a Vedanta. You would say that it is a trans a lot like Vishishtadvaita Vedanta. And there is a one divine unity of which we are all parts. Vishishtadvaita Vedanta is actually not pantheism. There are subtle differences. And a most sophisticated version of that is Advaita Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta, which Vivekananda is going to talk about. I dare say if Einstein has read this lecture of Swami Vivekananda, he would have been very happy, he would have been delighted at this conception, which is probably more refined conception of what Spinoza was talking about. So, what is Swami Vivekananda's answer to this great problem of religion and renunciation? He says the answer is the deification of the world. And he quotes from the Ishopanishad. The first verse of the first mantra of the Ishopanishad The Upanishads are a root text of Vedanta. Isha Upanishad, one of the most well-known Upanishads, one of the smallest, only 18 mantras. One of the most important, and the Isha Upanishad, the first mantra is the most important. In the first mantra, the first line is the most important. Mahatma Gandhi, this age was the ones. Mahatma Gandhi said, if all of Hinduism were to disappear, all the books and temples and everything, just the first verse, that the first line of the first verse is the Upanishad remains, all of Hinduism could remain. It's that important. And Swami Vivekananda takes that as a solution to the problem of a religion and a renunciation. What is that mantra, that first in a grand opening mantras of Isha Upanishad? ईशावास्यमिदं सर्वज्ञं यत्किञ्चित् जगत्यां जगत् तेन त्यक्तेन भञ्जिताः मा गृधः कस्य सिद्धनम्. Take the first line. What does it mean? This entire universe of a moving and a non-moving beings, a living and a non-living, all this universe, cover it by God, cover it by the Lord. Isha, Shankaracharya interprets Isha is a Paramatma, as the Lord of this entire universe. Cover it by God. Swami Vivekananda says, not covered by false kind of optimism, trying to say, oh, it's all God. No, but he says, really open your eyes and see that it is indeed a God. What we thought is the world is actually seen in a reality. It is a God. In what sense? In the commentary, Ishopanishad Shankaracharya, 1400 years ago, writes a wonderful commentary. He says, it's not so much a question of covering it with God. Rather, God, that ultimate reality which the religion speaks about, exists right here, just now. So it's not a question of a covering so much as a uncovering. And how do you uncover? You discover only. So, covering is equal to uncovering. Uncovering is discovering. How do you discover? Shankaracharya gives there other convoluted examples. Anyway, let me tell you that example. I will go on later. The example he gives is a Chandanu Agaru Adi. He says, sandalwood, which is used in temple worship and in Hinduism, it is to come in blocks. And it seems, I don't know, but it seems, if it's kept in water, it develops a certain layer which has a foul smell. And process was before you use it for the worship, you rub it and rub it. Sarupa Nigharshanena. By continuous intense rubbing, the layer, the artificial layer which had formed, incident layer which had formed and rubbed out, and the natural fragrance of a sandalwood comes out. It's there. His point is to get the fragrance of a sandalwood, you don't have to spray sandal spray on it. That's artificial. Whereas if you are a rub it, the real inherent fragrance of a sandalwood is manifested. Exactly in the same way, we are under error. And Shankaracharya points out something there. If it is true that Brahman alone is the reality here, men and women and children and animals and stars and planets, causes and cocks, if it is in a reality, none other than this existence, consciousness, bliss at its core. If the universe is actually Brahman, then what about the universe that we see in things it is? This world of living, non-living, men, women, children, good and bad and evil, it necessarily becomes in appearance. What we thought was the reality, what we took to be the reality so far, in which we suffer, that becomes an appearance. It's not the ultimate reality. There is an underlying divinity which is the ultimate reality, which is to be discovered. Covered, uncovered, discovered. This whole idea of a Jagat Mithya, the whole world is an appearance. This has to be understood properly. It's not does not mean that I dismiss this. Here itself is the divinity. Dismiss this and I say that the other divinity is there. You missed it. hmm? Swami Vivekananda powerfully says, "He who plunges headlong with the foolish luxuries of this world has missed the way. He who runs away from this world, meditate and dine in Himalayan caves, he hates the world, who is cons the world, he is missed the way." Both of them has missed the way. If you catch a hold of this reality, you missed the way. If you let go of this and run up somewhere else trying to find a God elsewhere, you missed the way. But that's very strange. Either you take the world or give it. Here is the third option. Swami Vivekananda says, find God here itself, wherever you are, whomever you are be. There itself you can find God because God is there. You know the example of the ornaments and the gold. Suppose there are no ornaments where gold. There is a nice story. When a little stories which are used by the monks and the Himalayas to illustrate this point. One is the story of a jeweler. So he has a little son, and the jeweler would keep all the his materials, ornaments all locked up in a safe. Once he tells his son, "My son, go to the safe. Here is the key. Open it and I get some gold from there. I have to use it in my work." And the child runs up and he opens the safe and he comes back and says, "This is no